Welcome to Cox OC Connection. I'm Lacey Kelly and I'm your host for Cox Civic Connection, the segment where we interview your civic leaders. Today we have with us Mal Richardson, who is an attorney for the firm of Best and Krieger. Welcome, Mal.
Thanks for having me, Lacey.
You are our first city attorney that we've had on the show. And first of all, welcome. We'd like to have our viewers understand the role that you play with cities, what your responsibilities are, and really what your job is.
Yeah, sure. Well, first and hopefully not last city attorney on the show, but the role of a city attorney is to represent the city and the city council in all legal matters that are pertinent to the city. My client is the city council. I answer to the city council and I do all of their legal work, but I also represent the city in litigation, in transactional matters, land use deals, et cetera, et cetera. So essentially, any issue that arises at the city that is legal in any way is my work. The city council hires and fires me. There are actually only two employees in the city that are directly hired by the council, and that is the city attorney and the city manager. Everybody else essentially answers to the manager. So it's a direct relationship. What's interesting with the city council and attorney and manager is that there really is kind of a three-part relationship, where I answer to the council, but I also have a very close relationship with the manager. And without that relationship, it's really difficult to do the council's bidding, because the manager is the professional who's been trained to do public service, if you will. And so I have a strong relationship with the manager, but also the bidding of the council.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we hear a lot about the Brown Act, and that is our primary transparency law for local government. How does that really impact local government? Well,
the Brown Act, as you say, is the primary transparency law that impacts local government. It impacts it really in every way. Everything that the City Council does, the Planning Commission does, the city does, needs to be open and transparent. We talk in our country about our government, which is representative, right? And on the council level, it's the same thing. The council is elected by the citizens of the community, and their business is the council's business, and vice versa. So everything that the council does needs to be open and transparent. The Brown Act requires that any work done by the city council is done in a way that is transparent, so that the citizens are aware of what's going on. Now, at the risk of getting too legal here, the way that works is a majority of the council is not permitted to meet and discuss the city's business without first noticing that meeting and having an agenda. So that essentially precludes 3 members of a council from going to McDonald's or somewhere nicer, hopefully, and talking about council business. Now, that said, they're able to interact on a personal level and go out for dinner and talk about personal business, their families, the Angels, whatever it is. But the minute that that conversation goes to city business is the minute that they cannot speak any longer, because the Brown Act requires that any business transacted is transacted open and publicly.
Okay, and does that apply to only certain numbers, or to any, even just 2 council members who might be interacting socially?
Yeah, it's a good question. The way the Brown Act works is it requires that any meeting of a quorum of the council where business is transacted that is germane to the city be open and public. Now, a quorum is a majority of the council. Most city councils in Orange County consist of 5 members. So if there are 3 members or more that are meeting at the same time or at the same place and discussing city matters, that has to be a noticed and agendized meeting. 2 council members are certainly permitted to meet and talk, both socially and about council business. The minute that those 2 add a 3rd member is when they run afoul of the Brown Act. Now, it's important to note that the Brown Act doesn't only prohibit these meetings at the same time and same place, but it also prohibits meetings, for example, via email or via phone, where 3 council members may be discussing the same matter, not at the same time or place, but they begin to understand where the others stand on a certain issue. The whole aim of the Brown Act is to ensure that the public's business is transacted in a manner that the public understands exactly what is going on, what has been transacted. Now, there are certain exceptions to the Brown Act, the basic transparency regulations. Those are a bit more nuanced than we have time for tonight. But generally speaking, the council is required to transact their business in public so that we understand exactly what's going on.
Sure. In working for local governments and specifically cities, I've noticed that there's a lot more transparency laws for local government than our state government and even some of our regional bodies. And what has been interesting this last year is to watch our state government attempt to mitigate some of the requirements of transparency laws for local governments. ACC-OC has been a huge supporter of maintaining that transparency and open government, but can you comment a little bit on that movement by your state government? Yeah,
we've actually seen our friends in Sacramento enact a number of laws that have pulled back many transparency measures that have been in place for years, if not decades, essentially enabling city government to transact business in a less transparent manner. Now, we can guess at the motivations for those laws. One was certainly financial. It costs money to be fully transparent. It takes time to be fully transparent. And the state often is required to reimburse for many of those transparency measures that they require a city council to perform. So what they've done is essentially said, look, these transparency measures no longer have to be performed. ACC-OC, along with many councils, basically said in response, well, that may be the law now, but we're going to still abide by the previous law, which required more transparency. When it comes to transparency, when it comes to the Brown Act and to ethics, there are really two levels of compliance. There's the bare minimum, which is what the law requires, and then there's a higher standard, which is what's right. And even though the law may say that you can conduct business in a less transparent manner, it's right to be transparent. And so what ACC has admonished their members to do, what I have certainly counseled my clients to do, is to continue to abide by those transparency laws that have been essentially de-enacted by our friends up in Sacramento.
Right, right. Okay, thank you for that. Well, shifting gears a little bit, redevelopment was eliminated last year by our state, which really hit hard financially many of our member cities and many cities in the state. Can you comment on the impacts of that to the economy?
Yeah, it's been significant, and in certain circumstances it's been debilitating, especially with smaller cities where a lot of the money they have to perform projects within their jurisdictional boundaries was essentially taken by Sacramento. It's no longer there, and so you have projects that have simply come to a screeching halt. I can give you an example. Many people in Orange County are familiar with the El Toro Road project in Lake Forest. Now that's a redevelopment success which was performed a decade plus ago. That project consisted of years of both public and private projects. Now let's imagine that that project was in the pipeline and redevelopment was taken off of the table. You would have years of both jobs for construction and then decades going forward of retail, commercial, and public service jobs simply not there anymore. Not to mention the fact that redevelopment has this ability to really re-energize certain areas of the town. The El Toro Road Corridor project reinvigorated all of Lake Forest. It increased property values, both retail and residential, not to mention quality of life. So the economic impact, beyond just taking the money from local agencies up to Sacramento, has been significant because so many projects that create jobs, short-term and long-term, are no longer available, and they won't be for the foreseeable future.
Sure, and that's been discouraging for us too. It's an issue for many of our cities. So
it's very difficult.
Hopefully we'll be able to find some alternatives to redevelopment in the near future. Close cousin to transparency, ethics. You have done a great job, certainly for ACC-OC and many other areas of the state in terms of training on ethics to local elected officials. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, and again, this goes to the two levels of transparency and ethics. There's the bare minimum, what the law requires, and then there's what our moms taught us, and that's doing what's right. The law requires, this is it's known as AB 1234, AB 1234, requires that all local officials be trained in ethics, and it's a 2-hour course, which I give frequently, and it gives local officials the bare bones of how to how to govern honestly, legally, and ethically. There are countless laws in place to ensure that local officials are entering into contracts in a lawful manner, that local officials don't have conflicts of interest, that local officials understand the limitations on the kinds of gifts and the amounts of gifts that they can receive. Again, to ensure that those people who we've elected are doing our business in an honest and transparent manner. So the requirement is that these officials receive this training. When I train my clients, we always go above and beyond the bare minimum of AB 1234, and we talk about general principles of ethics, that there's doing what's legally required and again doing what's right. My take on that is that while you may, by complying with the law that is outlined in AB 1234, stay out of jail, it's better to stay as far away from that edge as possible. And what's been really refreshing is seeing, especially in Orange County, a new crop of politician or council member come on board that feels very, very strongly about ethics laws and ethics principles in general.
Sure, sure. In Orange County, I know our members, many of them have had a very high standard and wanted to comply and uphold doing what's right. As a matter of fact, we recently supported SB 751, which extends further the transparency laws to regional agencies that didn't have some of the same requirements as cities. We have a couple of affiliates, OCFA and OCTA, the Fire Authority and the Transportation Authority, that were already recording their individual board member votes, but that bill will extend that requirement to all regional agencies. What's your thoughts on that bill?
Well, as a proponent of transparency and being as transparent as absolutely possible, I strongly support that bill. As a lawyer, it's not my job to be political. It's not my job to support or detract from a bill. It's my job to ensure that my clients perform in a lawful and ethical way. I think that this bill ensures that happens, not only at the absolute local level, but at the higher levels as well. There's no reason that the constituents don't understand exactly what their elected and or appointed officials have voted on and why.
Right, right. Okay. You have been engaged in the association now for, I think, almost a year, and we've had some discussions about ground-up public policy, from the ground up, working collaboratively on good policy solutions, and you have gotten as excited about that notion as I have. Can you describe a little bit your passion about that idea and the movement that we have here in Orange County for collaborative public policy?
Sure. Well, it's not typical for an attorney to come out of a law school and choose to be a city attorney. It's certainly not the way to get rich as a lawyer. Most of my colleagues went into corporate law and real estate law. I chose to be in public service. I do feel passionately about it. I'm born and raised in Orange County, so affiliating with ACC-OC, or ACC better said, was a natural fit. It is an organization that focuses on public policy, that focuses on improving public policy, on improving transparency, all of the things that push me towards the career that I'm in right now. And it's focused in Orange County, at least for right now. And that's where I'm from, it's where I live, it's where I'm raising my family, so it's the perfect fit.
Right. And we appreciate the time and attention that you give to us. Best in Krieger is a pro bono legal counsel for the association. We want to thank you for your involvement. You will continue to be doing things for us and for our elected officials in Orange County that promote transparency and train elected officials how to do the best job that they can do. So thank you for spending time with us today. And I want to thank you. That's it for Cox Government Spotlight. Thanks for watching.